North Korea is a subject that is very dear to my heart as a Korean. I look at what's going on there. The 15 million people who have been killed out of a population of 25 million.
Yeah.
The people who are in concentration camps today, breaking big rocks into smaller rocks, there are torture techniques that are being employed where they're growing bamboo into their fingertips. There are kinds of things that are so unspeakable, so unthinkable, that I can't even begin to imagine why they would do it. The totalitarian regime where if someone even is missing a picture of Kim in their house, them and their entire family can go into concentration camps.
That's right. And you know, they are legally required to run back into a burning inferno, like say their residence, to rescue pictures of the Kims at the risk of their lives. They're legally required to do that. Elementary school child that scribbled on a picture of the Kims, the whole family was sent to concentration camps. And all the reasons for executions are ridiculous. It also, by the way, is the worst persecutor of Christians, bar none, according to every study, every year, whether the US State Department or an NGO, every study every year finds them to be the worst persecutor of Christians in the entire world.
How do we stop the Kim regime? Hello, this is Justus Smith with Proverbs Media Group, and we're coming to you live from CPAC 2025 in Washington, D.C. I have a very special guest. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Morse Tan. I work at Liberty University leading the Center for Law and Government. Previously, I was the Dean of the School of Law there. And before that, I served in the first Trump administration as the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, seeking justice for mass atrocity crimes all around the world. Genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and I've done a lot of work as a legal academic as well.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and start. What was the first war crime or genocide that you were on the case of?
Well, you know, there was a 26-year Sri Lankan civil war, and the Office of Global Criminal Justice had been trying for about a year to get a visa sanction designation against Shavendra Silva, who was the head of the army. And he was responsible for a whole array of war crimes. The thing is, there was a lot of opposition within the State Department bureaucracy against doing a public designation along these lines. And in the first 2.5 weeks that I was on the job, we got it across the finish line, something that they were trying to do for about a year before I showed up. And so this made news and really had an impact. And there were people inside of the State Department who didn't want it to happen, but it happened.
Wow. So could you kind of walk me through what does the process look like for actually bringing up crimes against a war criminal? How do you get justice?
There's a whole array of different ways that can happen. It could happen through courts. It can happen through commissions. It can happen through sanctions. It can happen through a whole array of diplomatic, legal, military at times if needed and when needed, political and intelligence tools. It can really involve a wide array of tools along these lines. And it's a unique office. This office does not exist, and this ambassadorship does not exist in any other country in the world in all of world history. So the US is unique in this regard, to have a dedicated office and ambassadorship along these lines.
Wow, and that is tremendous work you're doing. I want to talk about, for the viewers at home, to really send this home so they really understand how horrible these situations are. Can you describe some of the circumstances of these war crimes and the genocide? What did it look like?
Yes. Sometimes they are too horrible to talk about in polite conversation, if you will. But think of murder and rape and false imprisonment and torture and all sorts of, just imagine the most horrific crimes being conducted on a large systematic, organized scale. So it's not just individual crimes, but large, systematic, organized criminal activities that result in genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes. These are the sorts of things that I was dealing with day after day.
Wow, that must take a heavy toll.
It's grievous, but to have the opportunity to actually do something about it was tremendous and energizing, because I think the Lord's given me a strong sense of justice, and so it was very satisfying to pursue justice all over the world in regards to these heinous crimes, and to have a chance to do something about it through this unique position was fantastic. And I think the Lord spent decades preparing me to do that work prior to my doing it. Most of the time, my being unaware that He was preparing me for it, because I did not know I would serve in this until my initial interview was the first time it was even mentioned.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. That is a great testimony. Mm-hmm. What would be the most recent example of one of these atrocities committed against humanity?
Yeah, so on the final day of the first Trump administration, we got across the finish line the mass atrocity determinations for genocide and crimes against humanity against the Chinese Communist Party. And that was specifically for what they were doing in Xinjiang province against Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities. But it could be expanded to those in Tibet and Buddhists there, or Falun Gong, or Christians, because the Chinese Communist Party has destroyed more Christian church buildings than all other governments combined in the world. They're trying to change the scriptures to align with Chinese Communist Party doctrine, and they weren't among the top 20 persecutors of Christians in the world, but under President Xi, under Chairman Xi, they've re-entered the top 20 worst persecutors of Christians in the world.
Could you explain to the viewers how Falun Gong works? It's essentially this organ harvesting of Uyghur Muslims that would be on call whenever someone needed it. I think the people at home need to really see what this is.
It's really horrific. What it is, simply put, is murder. Because you have living human beings who are being murdered to harvest their organs, so that people who are seeking organs on medical tourism visits, meaning they need an organ, they want an organ, and they come to China and get fresh organs from freshly murdered people. Not only Falun Gong, but reportedly they are targeted to a disproportionate extent, but others as well. And this organ harvesting, the Chinese Communist Party has enabled China to become the organ center of the world in a lot of ways through harvesting of organs from just previously living human beings through murdering them.
That is absolutely horrible.
Yes.
Today, as we speak, are there still genocides like in Myanmar? What is the route of action to take care of these things?
Yeah. I really tried to get genocide determination against the Burmese military in Myanmar, same country, Burma, Myanmar are the same country, across the finish line before my time was up. I was especially sorrowful that it didn't get across the finish line when the Burmese military committed a coup d'etat about a month after my time in office. That determination happened a year after the coup. If it had happened before the coup, I'm left to wonder whether or not it could have helped prevent the coup from happening. But you had a genocide going on against the Rohingya inside of Burma. And that's another example of something that I was working on and tried to get across the finish line during my time. Finally, it got across about a year after the coup. I'm glad it got across the finish line, but I wish it would have gotten across the finish line earlier, before the coup happened.
What country do you think is responsible for the worst genocide of all time?
I'm thinking about that because there's different ways to think about it. One could think about the scope and the scale and the number of people. One could think about the breadth of it. Maybe the best known one was what happened in World War II. You had the Holocaust. What a lot of people don't know is half the Holocaust was against Christians. People generally know the Jewish part, but most people that I run across don't even realize that half the Holocaust was against Christians. So out of like 6 million, we're talking about around 3 million. And so that was a horrendous one that happened. But there are many examples. The 1.6 million in Cambodia, the approximately million in Rwanda. In North Korea, there has been the murder of 15 million in a country of only 25 million. And so that is ongoing. And North Korea is the most unjust place on planet Earth today. And so that is something that I've dedicated a good bit of my time and work on in terms of writing and speaking about what's going on in North Korea and the concentration camps that are akin to Hitler, Mao, and Stalin. But in this respect, it's worse than them in that they have grandchildren of those who ran afoul of the regime who are forced to be in these concentration camps, sometimes born there and living their entire lives there. And so what is happening in North Korea, it's the most unjust, oppressive situation on the planet, and believe me, I know of many of them.
North Korea is a subject that is very dear to my heart as a Korean. I look at what's going on there. The 15 million people who have been killed out of a population of 25 million.
Yeah.
The people who are in concentration camps today, breaking big rocks into smaller rocks, there are torture techniques that are being employed where they're growing bamboo into their fingertips. There are kinds of things that are so unspeakable, so unthinkable, that I can't even begin to imagine why they would do it. The totalitarian regime where if someone even is missing a picture of Kim in their house, them and their entire family can go into concentration camps.
That's right. And they are legally required to run back into a burning inferno, like say their residence, to rescue pictures of the Kims at the risk of their lives. They're legally required to do that. Elementary school child that scribbled on a picture of the Kims, the whole family was sent to concentration camps. And all the reasons for executions are ridiculous. It also, by the way, is the worst persecutor of Christians, bar none, according to every study, every year, whether the U.S. State Department or an NGO, every study every year finds them to be the worst persecutor of Christians in the entire world.
How do we stop the Kim regime?
I think one of the ways that can happen is to work towards reunification of North and South Korea. And I believe God is going to do that. Exactly how or exactly when, He is sovereign. But I look forward to that day when the divided peninsula will be reunited, not under the tyranny of the Kim regime, but under the systems and under the leadership that is there in South Korea. But let me tell you something. The South Korean democracy is in danger right now, where you have a conservative president who is staunchly aligned with the United States of America, is trying to promote trilateral cooperation with Japan, and because he's been trying to investigate and go after the indications of election fraud, he has been impeached. And he is potentially weeks from being convicted in that impeachment by the Constitutional Court and potentially removed prematurely from office. And you have elements in South Korea, influences from the Chinese Communist Party and from North Korea, spies who are at work, who are involved in trying to oust President Yoon because he is onto them. And so why is it that 20-some members of the Yoon administration have been impeached, including the president, including the prime minister who took his place, including the board of audit and inspection, including prosecutors who are going after the corruption that is in South Korea. These are the people who are getting impeached. And so you have a coup d'etat, you have a overthrow of the Yoon administration that is happening in Korea, and it's hanging by a thread. It could come down to people anticipate a 6-2 vote against President Yoon, but if just one more justice on that court votes in favor of President Yoon, he will be restored as president. And there's a great need to investigate the election cheating that is alleged to be happening, and there are all sorts of indicators of that are there. How is it that some districts had more votes than registered voters? How is it that you have, according to an expert in the University of Michigan who specializes in looking at such things, he says on average there was cheating done over 7% per district in the elections in South Korea. These are things that need deeper investigation, and yet the National Election Commission is saying, nothing to see here, we're not going to hand over anything, just trust us, everything's fine. Oh, all these conspiracy theorists, oh, forget those crazy people. If they're so confident, show us the proof of that. And yet they're refusing to do that. The Constitutional Court is refusing to allow that evidence to go in, even though this was the central reason why President Yoon declared martial law, which they are attacking him as abusing his power and therefore worthy of being impeached and convicted. And how is this irrelevant to that claim? It's entirely relevant, and yet they're dismissing it as irrelevant. We don't need to look at the voter rolls. We don't need to examine the electronic voting systems that are there. Never mind that there are Huawei components inside of them. Never mind all these things that are worthy of serious concern and investigation. They're trying to stiff-arm those attempts to hide, potentially, tremendous election cheating that's been going on that has granted a supermajority in the single body of the legislature in Korea that is turning the country more towards North Korea and to the Chinese Communist Party. You have a democracy on the edge of a cliff right now in South Korea.
Wow. In the case that President Yoon is impeached, what charges are he possibly facing? Could he be executed? Could he be set to prison for life? What kind of punishments is he looking at?
Some of the things that they're raising against him could put him in prison for life, could even call for execution. There's a separate trial that is going on that is basically accusing him of insurrection. But think about it, he's the president of the country. Insurrection? What are they talking about? Oh, they're talking about the legislative tyranny that's going on and that he has the guts and the courage to stand against that. And so there's a separate trial from the impeachment trial that is also going on concurrently, and the stakes are high. They also illegally stormed the presidential residence and removed the president. He finally came out because he didn't want there to be bloodshed over this and set him into solitary confinement. This is illegal as well in various respects. There are multiple ways, both in terms of the charges and the procedures, that were illegal in how this was done. And they're rushing this through, this impeachment thing, so that they can impeach and remove him before his presidential rival, Lee Jae-myung, is convicted and disqualified from being a candidate for the crimes he is accused of. And so there is a political and legal race going on along these lines as well. And so this whole process has been hastily put forward and in order to remove the legitimately elected president of South Korea.
It's a terrible thing, and my heart goes out to him and his family.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely egregious what's happening. And when it comes to reunification, polls show that every year the South Korean students that are taking these polls are less and less willing to reunify with North Korea. The issue with it is that even North Koreans don't speak the exact same dialect as South Koreans. They wouldn't have the same education, they wouldn't have the same access to any of the resources. So one of the greatest difficulties we face is how they would be able to assimilate cultures effectively without swamping South Korea in a way that would be disadvantageous to the South Koreans. I personally feel it. I've been called to this for my whole life. It's my biggest dream to help the reunification of North and South Korea. And I try to envision the safest way this could get done. And I envision that in the beginning, we would try to move people from South Korea into North Korea to work on industrializing it first, and then have a slow movement where there's an actual acclimation. What do you think that would look like the day the border is opened? What is the most effective way to handle the reunification?
Yeah, well, President Yoon actually was appointing governors of various provinces in North Korea. He's already done that. And that has to be activated with a reunification. But I think the people of South Korea needs to think more deeply and broadly and long-term in regards to this, rather than thinking about potential shorter-term disadvantages. And let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. First of all, it's the same people. And so it's reunifying that which has been existed for over 5,000 years. And this is an artificial, ghastly sort of thing with the communist North. Second of all, think of the humanitarian concerns of the people of North Korea. And so if you have any compassion whatsoever for that, I think you should be concerned. Third of all, North Korea is actually wealthier in natural resources. Whether it's rare earth minerals or other natural resources, North Korea has greater amounts of these natural resources than South Korea does. And so there could potentially be a win-win, so to say, along those lines. The North Korean military arsenal is no longer then a threat to South Korea. It becomes part of the South Korean and the United Korean arsenal, and you don't have that threat, military threat. And then, oh, guess what? You don't have to have required military service anymore for South Korean male citizens, right? And also, the greatest resource that God provides are human resources. And so what talents and gifts and abilities are hidden and have never been developed in North Korea that could be developed? Think about the re-evangelization of North Korea that can happen. Think of a united Korea as a sending center for missions all over the world into the 1040 window to complete the Great Commission that Jesus gave us. There's a lot of reasons for reunification. Think about all the expertise that South Korea could provide to build the roads and the other infrastructure that North Korea lacks. And think about the Trans-Siberian Railway that runs through North Korea that can be built and that can expand the trade and travel network in that area. There's a lot of reasons for reunification, but those are some of them. And I would not be opposed to a sudden reunification. I think it would be good if not only do South Koreans to have a generous heart along these lines, but I think there should be help from all over the world in that process. And it can be done. East and West Germany have been successfully reunited. It can be done. That's the most looked to example that scholars looking at potential reunification for South Korea and North Korea look at. But I think it can be done. I think it should be done. And it could be a tremendously positive game changer. But you have to look deeper and longer and wider to be able to catch that vision Otherwise, if you're just thinking short term and cramped, it might be uncomfortable. And how come they removed all the words with Hancha, with Chinese characters in it? And why do they speak in that unusual way, or things along those lines? I don't think that should be grounds for opposing reunification. And I think there are positive ways to approach it so that the Korean Peninsula can be a powerful bastion for the kingdom of God, gospel of Jesus Christ, and for that to go forth into the 1040 window and worldwide. And think about it, we could see the completion of the Great Commission. We are not that far from completing translation of the Bible into every language in the world. 2030, 2035 are some of the dates that are being thrown out. That's 5 to 10 years. And then prophecy needs to be fulfilled and for Jesus to return. This gospel will be preached to all peoples, and then the end will come, right? And so Korea can play a strategic role in that. South Korea already is alone. Imagine with the re-evangelized North Korea united together, what could happen? And maybe some North Koreans who in a united Korea would be willing to be missionaries in places that some South Koreans would not go otherwise.
I completely agree, and I think you've addressed all of the concerns extremely well. Mm-hmm. Every single one of the things that I've heard, because I'm a huge supporter of the idea of the reunification. Mm-hmm. It's a very complex subject. Yeah. I don't know enough yet to know how it'll get done, but I want nothing more than it to get done. It's one of my greatest calls as a Korean American. I want to do something about it. I'll do everything in my power, and when I enter a position to do something, I will.
I'm with you.
Yes. This has been very illuminating. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing your insights with us, and I hope that we get to speak again soon.
Would look forward to it.
Amen. God bless you, brother.
God bless you too.